Hello everyone and welcome to WPF tutorials. Today we're going to be talking about content controls in WPF. So what is a content control? Well, it's a control that contains content. Duh. No, you may seriously be asking, well, isn't that the same thing that layout containers did for us? You put content in layout containers, right? Well, not really. Layout containers like the dock panel and the stack panel and the wrap panel are used to organize elements in the window and aren't technically controls anyway because users can't directly interact with them. So for example, a button is a content control because we can actually put content inside of it and interact with it. So here's a question. Is the text block a content control just because it can contain text? Well, no, not really, because the user can't interact with it. What about the label control? Yes, that actually is a content control because the user can interact with it if there are hotkeys assigned to it and it can contain content. So for those of you that remember the layout containers, we can put any number of elements in there because all of the panels expose a children collection. Well, with content controls, we can actually only put one element, but we can actually get around that one element limitation because the one element could actually be a layout container of multiple elements. So, I think this is a good time for an example. What we're going to do here is we're going to take a button and we're going to put a red square and some text in it. So here we have a button with content in it, and that content being a stack panel of a red rectangle and a text block. I know it's really not that groundbreaking of an example, and you may have seen this done before, but I just need you to know that it can be done. And WPF doesn't really limit you in any way to a boring plain text description like Windows Forms used to do. So this really allows us to get creative with the content in our controls. I know we haven't really gone over this in much detail yet, but I'm going to go over it anyway. Okay, so here is a diagram that I drew up in paint.net. Hopefully this will help us understand what's going on a little bit better with the content controls. So here we have a content control right here, and this derives from the control class, which derives from the framework element along with two other classes, the shape and the panel. And then finally, the framework element derives from the UI element. So let's say, for instance, we have a button. Let's say there's two buttons. Let's say there's one that has content that derives from the UI element. And let's say there's another one that does not derive from the UI element. So for this one, as an example, let's just use a shape. So let's say there's an ellipse that gets set to the content of the button. What's going to happen is the onRender method will be called and the ellipse will be drawn onto the button. However, if the content property gets set to something that doesn't derive from the UI element, let's say date, time, .now, for instance, which returns an object of type date. In this situation, the toString function will be called on that object, and the string 3252011 will be set as the content. So I'm going to comment out the stack panel in here, and now we just have a plain button. And then in the code behind here, I'm going to set button.content equal to datetime.now. And as you can see, the button was rendered with the date object cast to a string. So as you can see, the content and the content controls also need to be aligned somehow. So for that, we're actually going to use the horizontal content alignment and vertical content alignment properties. So for instance, on our button, I want to use the horizontal content alignment to move my red box and text to the left. You can see it did that there. Or I could move it to the right, but I prefer it to be stretched horizontally. So the whole point of this video is really just to show the power of the content model in WPF and how it's allowing us to actually put any kind of element inside of content controls, and that allows for us to create a rich user experience that is very flexible and pretty simple to use. So that is actually it for today, guys, and if you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, please leave them in the comment section below the video. Thanks, and see you next time.